Hello everybody, my name's Jay for the Photography Academy and welcome to today's Top Talk guest webinar with Emily Hancock, and she's going to be telling us all about her life as a specialist in equine photography. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get Emily online with us. So hi Emily, how are you?
Hello Jay, I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. So hopefully you should be seeing your start screen there, Emily.
Yes.
Brilliant. So I'm not going to waste any more time because I know that the first part of your introduction is going to be telling us about yourself anyway. So you just tell me when you're ready to move the slides on, and like I said, I'll only interrupt when the questions are relevant. So all over to you, everybody. Emily Hancock. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So, well, hello everyone. I have to say I'm exceedingly excited to be here, and I'm getting a little bit nervous because I'm just watching the figures for how many attendees are on the call, and it's just gone up over 180 people. So I have to say that's making me a little bit nervous, but like I say, I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I really hope that this presentation is useful for you. And like Jay said, I would welcome any questions at any point throughout the presentation. So just to start, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about me, who I am, just so you have some understanding of where I've come from. And as you can see, these are some photographs from my family. And I turned the big 3-0 last year, and that was kind of exciting and nervous for me because I, was in my 20s, and I'd been running my business then for 10 years, and so it was a big deal for me to come into my 30s, and I have big plans. I'm very ambitious, and so I've got big goals for this decade. But I live in the New Forest. The bottom right photograph, you can see a little sort of shed-type cottage place, and that's where I live with my husband and my son, Barnaby, who's 2 years old and completely gorgeous. I know I'm totally biased, but yeah, we have the most wonderful life. I have horses and have done all my life. We've got a gorgeous dog called Murphy, and yeah, I basically love everything about my life, and the fact that I'm a photographer. I have a very, very supportive family, and it's just the most wonderful career if you can have it, and if all, well, it's up to 190 people now, so if all of you are photographers, then aren't we lucky people? Because I have to say, being a photographer is my chosen career, and I would never want to change. And that's even more prominent because I have found my absolute passion in life and been able to make a successful career out of photographing horses. So as you can see in the top left, this is one of my clients. We were photographing a horse on the beach. He does tricks with his horses, and he trains them up for films. And at the end of the photo shoot, he said to me, "Oh, Emily, do you want a ride?" And so I was like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I'd love one. That'd be amazing." I was so delighted. And I thought he would put the saddle and the bridle back up on the horse, but in actual fact, he got the horse to lie down in the sand, and Emily, jump on. So I got on the horse, and we did this wonderful Spanish walk and piaffe up the beach. And luckily my assistant on the day, who was a very dear friend, grabbed the camera and took some shots of me riding this most spectacular horse. So like I say, photography and finding my passion with photography has been the most wonderful thing, and I love every day of it. So if you could flick on to the next slide, Jay, that would be great. I'll just tell you a little bit how I got into photography and my journey. It really started from the age of about 16, and I was very passionate about photography. I decided when I was at university, I was actually studying science, but I decided at that point there was no way on this planet I was going to sit in a laboratory for the rest of my life testing chemicals. And so I got on the phone and phoned some photographers, some horse photographers specifically, and I got through to this one guy and I said, you know, I'm desperate to learn. Is there any chance I could shadow you for a day? And he said, sure, come on down, and you know, you can come and photograph alongside me, and we'll, you know, see how it goes. So anyway, I turn up at this polo match, and I just happened to be photographing Prince Harry, Charles, and William on my first photography assignment. So that made me rather nervous again, and but it was a good start. Anyway, that photographer said to me, let me see your images. Well, once you've developed them, it was film in those days. And so I sent him the photographs, and he offered me a job. And so I was like, this is it. I've made it. I'm now a photographer. Here we go. So I worked for him for a couple of years, and he paid me really well, and I got great experience. And then I sort of realized that actually he was probably making at times the amount of money out of that I was being paid, and thought, you know what, I fancy a bit of that. So I then decided to set up my own company, an event photography company, events. So I did that for, again, a couple of years, and it was fantastic at the time, quite labor intensive, but it was great for a starting place for me. And I actually then, obviously, people start to ask you weddings and portraits, and you know, I was taking all of those on, and sort of started to realize that I quite enjoyed that, because I felt I could be maybe a little bit more creative with the portrait side. So I actually did some training with Annabelle Williams and did their bespoke group. So I had a year up there learning about business. And that was one of the best things I ever did, because I really didn't have a clue about business at that point. I could take nice photographs, but I didn't know how to sell them, and that's really key to making a successful photography business. So I applied all my knowledge that I got from bespoke and started doing equine portraiture. I got my first studio and really became very serious about it. So a few years on, started to become really successful, really well known in that area, and then I decided that I wanted to go for my qualifications, and so I got an associateship and then a fellowship, and this kind of brings me up to the present day, where for the last few years I've been doing a lot of training, and I have the most wonderful location. I had a barn that I was able to convert on our land, and so I now have a training, which is exciting because I can sit here and group training and one-to-one and whatnot. And so the training barn was launched last year, and I have just basically got huge plans for the next 10 years. I'm so excited. My photography business is just going to take me in many different directions. But one thing I know is that having found my niche, it has been the best thing I've ever done to really focus in on a specific market. And the equine market is amazing. So it's very lucrative. There's great clients out there, and very loyal clients at that. So I'm excited about the next 10 years. And anyway, I'll stop talking about myself now, and if we can move on, we'll to the next slide, then we'll get into how to prepare and implement the perfect equine shoot. Now, this is, when I started to break it down, in my mind, doing a shoot is like second nature. I find it quite easy, and I thought it was quite simple, but in actual fact, having broken it down, there are so many different points that I go through and have to consider so that, excuse me, so that a shoot runs smoothly. Now, one of the biggest things is preparation. Now, preparation, yes, in things like making sure your kit is all working, you've got your batteries charged, you know, you've got lots of card space, and excuse me, I just drink some water. So making sure that all your kit's together the night before. I have been known to stop halfway up the driveway and just check that I actually have put my camera in the boot, even though I did it a couple of minutes before. But that's important. But preparation from the point of view of prepping your client. So a couple of days before the shoot, I will phone my client and just make sure that I know the directions, I know roughly where they're local maps. Quite often the sort of places that I'm going to will have gates that have locks on them and codes, so I'll make sure that I've got gate codes. And quite often, again, because we're shooting in rural locations, there'll be no mobile signal. So I'll just make sure I've got all the right numbers so that I can contact anyone if I get lost. But most importantly, I talk through clothing and hair and makeup with my clients. So I would recommend that every client has 3 outfits ready. Now, some people, if I'm going to their home, they will pull out their favorite clothes and we will have a look at them when I get there. Or other clients that keep their horses in separate yards, that they'll bring their clothing. Mostly they'll fill up their entire boot with nice dresses and jeans and tops, etc. So we'll go through when I get to the yard. Now, I would recommend, like I said, 3 outfits, and I say to the client, grab a casual set of clothes, something that sort of goes in the smart casual section, and then through to the smart. So I leave it quite open. I do tell them that I prefer muted colours and tones, so that usually I would say, you know, if you're wearing a t-shirt that is bright pink and a luminous yellow and it's got big flowery patterns on it, then if you imagine I'm photographing you and your horse in the woods, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. So I just recommend that they keep their clothes quite muted and just nice country colours. I always say no jodhpurs, no mucking out jackets, and the reason being, excuse me, that I want my clients to feel special on the photo shoot. These guys are always mucking out, they're always in jodhpurs, they're always knee-deep in mud. So for them to get dressed up in a nice pair of jeans and a going-out top, you know, a bit of makeup, etc., is something special for them. So I want to make the photo shoot as special an experience as possible. So I also prep them a little bit about the horse. I personally don't like horses to be plaited up for the photo shoot. If my client wants that, that's absolutely fine. But I would say, you know, the sort of shoots I do are very natural, at home. So I want a relaxed feel to them. I want the horse to, yes, be clean and have had a bath and be 2 foil done and, you know, a little bit of oil on its nose to make it sparkle a bit. But generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend plaiting or the client being in their competition gear. So just nice clothes, nice smart horse, and also to have a bridle and a head collar that are both clean and smart. With head collars, I'd recommend that they're black or brown. So yeah, so a preparation on that side of things is really key, because if you don't prep your client before you turn up, they'll probably be in mucky jodhpurs and a mucky jacket. They won't have done their hair, and it just will make such a difference. Now, variation is key to selling lots of images. So I like to be able to have changes of locations and changes of clothing. Now, I generally split my photo shoot up into 3 different sections, and that corresponds with 3 different outfits. Now, when I arrive at a yard, well, I always like to have just half an hour time where I'm just drinking a bit of tea, having a chat with my clients, meeting the horse, and I'll have my notebook and pen with me, just a small pocket notebook, and I'll ask the client if they can just walk me around the location, the yard, the outskirts of the yard, so that I can see all the different locations that I could possibly want to shoot in. And I'll ask the client key questions about the horse's behavior, where they are okay to go, where we are and aren't allowed to go. So if we're on someone else's property, it might be that we definitely can't use the lawns, for example. You can imagine heavy horses on nice manicured lawns doesn't always go down well. So I make sure that wherever I'm shooting, I know where we are and aren't allowed to go. And in my notebook, I will write things down like, so these are locations that I think are going to be awesome to shoot in. So in my notebook, I might write stable, log pile, rickety gate, tree line, road, and they are just joggers. Basically, before I had this notebook with me, so maybe in my first year or so of shooting, I would get halfway through a shoot and I would get creative block. I would suddenly think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? And I didn't want to look panicky to my client. I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew there was more stuff I could do. I'd thought of it earlier, but I hadn't written it down. And so what I felt was that I'd always get to this point where I needed something to help me just carry on. So I decided to take this notebook, and more often than not, I will not get through all the locations because by the time the owner and horse have got tired, I still haven't done a couple. But what I've made sure that I've done is covered the absolute best ones first. So with regards to just making the shoot an entirely positive experience, you want to, yourself, if you were having a photo shoot with your family and the children were misbehaving and everyone was really stressed out and oh my goodness, they didn't perform for the photographer, you can see how then looking at those photographs, that's the experience you'd remember. So it's really important that I like to just keep my clients really happy and everything's really chilled out, no pressure. And the last thing to do when you finish a shoot is just to prepare your client for the viewing. So I would always say to them, I will edit the images and they'll be ready in about 10 days' time, and then I'll invite you down to my studio for a viewing. And that's where we'll go through all your images and you'll pick the ones you want. So just preparing them for that viewing process is also quite critical. Jay, if you could possibly move on slides, that would be great. So start it. You've prepped, you've got them pick the clothes, they've got hair and makeup all done, it looks great, the horse looks great, everything's right. So you've done your location scouting, and now it's time to start. So everyone knows that it is nerve-wracking being on the other side of the camera. So I always want to start in a place where it feels like there's no pressure. Now, bearing in mind that when you're photographing someone with their horse, 50% of their attention is on controlling that horse, what their horse is doing. Is their horse behaving for the camera? It's exactly the same as having a 2-year-old child, basically, and you need to be almost, your full attention is going on that child or the horse and hoping that it is going to behave itself. So horses are like humans. They have personalities like humans. Some are very hyperactive, some are very laid back, and you get everything in between. So I like to use a place where we can keep the horse under control, usually from his friends who are probably all eating in the field, maybe 500 yards down the way. And if you take that horse for its first photo up the road away from its pals, it's going to not necessarily freak out, but some of them will. So, you know, I like to start on the yard, and stable yards have a whole host of locations, if you like. So if on my notebook I wrote stable yard, broken down there would maybe be 3 or 4 different areas that would be classed under the yard. So for example, stable, mounting block, cute little log pile, menage, so that you can still have lots of different photographs in different areas, but be under this one yard banner. And the reason I would do that, so the yard would be, I said earlier that I split my photo shoots up into 3 sections. So I would do the yard would be the first section, and I would decide the clothing for that one location. The second might be out and about, so possibly off the property, and there would be a new outfit for that location. And then third, there might be a woodland or a field with really long grass in it, and that would be the third location and the third outfit. So this first location, I want there to be no pressure. I want to have the horse under control, so we're on the yard where it knows. We've got multiple options, and for images, because like I say, variety is key. And there's a few points to mention when you start photographing. You will very quickly realize that horse owners talk to their horses all the time. And what happens is you get this millisecond where the horse looks fantastic, its ears have gone forward, it's kind of smiling. You know, I know horses don't smile, but the same thing, they're looking good. You have a millisecond to capture that. Now, if your owner is saying good boy, now if you just say good boy, you can see what your lips do, and they kind of purse. So I take a photograph, and if my owner has said good boy at that second, then that shot cannot be used. So one thing I always say to my clients is just keep smiling, looking at your horse adoringly, try not to talk. And they all get that, and they slip back into it because it's a completely natural thing for horse owners to keep chatting away. But it's a really important point. Now, the other thing they do is when they have bridles and head collars on, naturally a horse owner will hold the reins quite tightly, and often in photographs it will look like their horse is pulling them because they are quite tense in their arms and in their hands. So one thing I would always say is just keep relaxing your reins, drop your hands, just relax the lead rope, and that's quite a key thing. So keep smiling, don't talk. I always say it's all about you and the horse. Just look adoringly and lovingly at your horse until I direct you otherwise, and relax your reins. So Jay, if we could move on to the next slide.
Sure. I'm actually going to jump in as well, because you did say if
Okay.
we've got some relevant questions. I've got a few building up, and I didn't want to interrupt you there, but I think they're key to what we're talking about now. So I'll just quickly jump. I seem to have a couple of people, quite a few recurring questions, and I think I mentioned it to earlier. Do you use off-camera flash at all?
I don't use flash at all, and there's no real reason for it other than I don't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable with every horse using flash like I said about their personalities, some that are highly strung might not take to flash very well. And with my clients, I've photographed horses that have cost them in excess of £1 million, and for me to use some flash around a horse that could just break loose because I set my flash gun off doesn't really, I just would rather not, and my style and look is with natural light. So I do know guys that do use flash and they look awesome and the images look awesome, but it's just not my thing.
That's great, thank you for that. Actually, well, that actually led on to a question, but obviously, as you said, that you don't use flash. Somebody was saying, no, if they are using it, do you have any advice? They were specifically referring to trying to capture the horse in motion, or would you just completely avoid using flash altogether? Or do you have any hints or tips to do it so not to alarm the horse?
So really, most of the people that use flash, and certainly if I was going to, it would be in, for example, a big barn initially. So you might have an indoor school, which would mean you could capture a horse running with flash, depending if you wanted it on a specific background or not. I mean, to take flash out into a field and get a horse to gallop through it would be risky, to say the least. You'd certainly need good insurance, and I don't know how comfortable an owner would be with that anyway. But if I was going to use flash, I would set it up in a barn. There would be someone holding the horse, obviously, initially, and it would be a very controlled zone. Obviously, you know, with lighting setups, you're going to need the wires and whatnot are all going to have to be tidy and not a hazard. So as many assistants as you could have would be the best plan.
That's great, thank you. How long does a typical shoot of yours last?
So before I had Barnaby, I used to go say in the morning for maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I would shoot for say an hour and a half. I'd stop, have lunch with my clients, and then I'd do an afternoon shoot for about an hour and a half again. Since I've had Barnaby, I've had to reassess my business and how family life fits into that, and so now my shoots are no longer than 2 hours, and I will always start at 9:30 and I'll be out by midday.
Actually, that leads me on to my next question. Do you have a preferred time of day? But obviously, you've just explained that. Is there a time of day that you would prefer to shoot, or is that the best time to do it?
That is the best time to do it for me with a family and horsey people. So most horses will be stabled at night and they'll go out during the day. And horses are a little bit fresher in the morning, so you might get a little bit more alertness from them, and that's good for the photography. If a horse has been out in the field all day eating for 10 hours, you know, they feel a little bit like us, coming in and bloated. So typically you wouldn't ride your horse straight after it's come in from the field, because it will be a bit sluggish. And so that would be the same for photography. It's just, you know, it's the end of the day and it's been eating all day. So I prefer the morning, one, for family, and two, because the horses are a little bit more alert, they're a bit fresher.
That's brilliant. I've moved the slide on for you. The rest of the questions I'm going to hang on to for now, unless I feel irrelevant about what you're talking about. So all yours again. Cool.
Thank you. So as you can see, this is all in a stable, and so when I'm photographing someone, what I like to do is, now I said to you earlier that we have the main heading of yard, and within that location we have the stable, we have the mounting block, we have the log pile, or whatever else you find. Now within each of those, I would try and do 3 to 5 different poses. And of each of those poses, I would have possibly 3 varieties of that same shot. So, for example, the lady, for example, the bottom right image where the lady's hugging around her horse. So that pose, but maybe one shot she's looking at me smiling, the next shot she's looking at her horse, and the next shot maybe the horse has just moved its head up a little bit and she's kissing him on the nose there. So like I said, variety, but you obviously don't want to just repeat images. You don't want to, for the viewing, just put loads of her smiling at me through, but you want variety. The biggest thing you can do on an equine shoot is shoot lots of variety and keep it quick. Horses are honestly like 2-year-old children, most of them. They get bored, they get fidgety, they just want to be doing stuff, they want to be eating grass, they want to be with their mates, whatever it is that you need to work fast. So as you can see, we've got kind of cuddling the horse, leaning over the stable door, turn sideways and put your back against the wall, crouch down. That top middle one, you can see you get the horse just looking down into your lap, and that's a really beautiful thing. When you've got very big horses that are very grand and you crouch down and they come down towards you, you get that beautiful soft pose where they just look like they love you. This is a really popular image, and they love the look of their horses loving them, basically. If you're lucky enough, top right, you'll get a nice big window seat where you can get that sort of a shot. I actually have only come across that a couple of times, but this image for me has been very successful as far as all my clients go, oh, can I have a shot like that? But of course then the image below, you'll see balancing on her stable door wouldn't have been particularly easy. So, you know, just if you can, as much variety, think about cropping. So the middle bottom shot there, you can see I've got the rusty surround to the stable there and all the nice brick and stone, so I've come out nice and far. You get, stables are gorgeous for light. Pretty much if you've got a dark stable, it just drops off in the background, which means you've just got nice light coming in on your subjects, and yeah, it's the best place to start a shoot. And you'll see there's a variety. Sometimes I use head collars, sometimes bridles, and sometimes no head collar or bridle at all. So again, there's variety. One thing you do have to be really careful, and I always ask my clients, is, you know, will your horse be okay if I open the door? Is your horse likely to run out? And so it will either be a yes or no, and that will determine. You can see in the bottom right shot with the lady smiling at the camera, the stable door is open and her horse does not have a head collar or bridle on, and that's because she told me she was perfectly confident that her horse would stand there. So that's why that shot was taken like that. Now the one on the left bottom corner, you will see the stable door's open, but this horse has a bridle on. This lady was definitely not confident that her horse wouldn't gallop off to the field with the door open. You very much have to judge a shoot by the client's knowledge of the horse. If that horse is not going to play ball, then you need to do everything in your power to make sure that the shoot goes successfully, and thinking about safety and everything like that is really key. If you notice the clothing, I have no control really over what my clients actually want to wear. So if I say no big logos, no bright colours, that's fine. I've told them what I recommend. You know, some people have favourite purple jackets, which actually the lady in the bottom left did, but and actually it looked fine. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but it it looked great on her, and as you can see, the images in black and white, and you'd never know. So you can see they all look quite smart. There's no jumpers and there's no mucky jackets. So yeah, if we move on to the next slide. Thank you, Jay. This is just another shot of an image of that gorgeous, where the owner's crouching down. You'll notice she's slightly turned towards me, so always make sure you can see the face of the owner, and she's just opened her hand there. As instructed by me, I've said, put your hands in your lap and just encourage him to come down close to you. Now, you'll see that with this image, there will have been a set where that horse came right down into her lap. She probably then put her forehead on the horse's head. Again, you have to be a bit careful. Some horses like to headbutt, so they'll all kind of scratch themselves on you. So I always say, just be careful you don't get, you know, knocked or whatever. And also, some people say, oh, is my stable okay? You know, is it going to look really bad in the shot? Now, I quite like to be able to see a nice, fluffy, comfortable bed in the background. I think, you know, that's where the horse lives. That's kind of cute. So, and you'll notice this horse has the bridle on. His reins are over his, not over his head, on his end. So it just looks relaxed and lovely, and is a nice shot. Again, like I said, it's a popular shot with my clients because their horses look really cozy. So if you could move on to the next slide, Jay. When you then get off the stable yard and you've done a whole lot of things, you can go out and about, and this becomes quite a bit more tricky. You've spent time finding locations, and you know, I'm always looking for locations that have nice backgrounds, and nice backgrounds, I quite like foliage, basically. I like lots of different textures and colours, but what you must do, and what you must remember to do, is turn 360 degrees around yourself and just see what's around, what's about. You'll be surprised. Sometimes you're looking in one direction and you forget to look to your left or your right, and suddenly you can see this gorgeous angle that just changes everything. You've got gorgeous foliage and a tree here and there, and if you just put your horse and owner in that tiny little spot, you'd suddenly transform that location that actually before maybe didn't look like much, but can do. So you've got to aim for things that are not going to be scary for the horses. Horses are contrary, to say the least. You know, a massive cement lorry might come past them and they don't bat an eyelid. A butterfly comes flying past them and they absolutely freak out. So always just need to be cautious. Make sure you ask your owner if they're comfortable. You know, it's pretty standard. Most people can walk their horse up the road, you know, in a bridle and be safe. But I would never want to assume that with them. So I would always ask. Clients get very stressed out if their horses are not playing ball. So my job is to absolutely keep them relaxed, keep reassuring them that they are doing a fantastic job, the images are coming out amazing, everything's just fun and easy, and not to worry about it. If the horse doesn't want to go in a certain location, that's fine. Just do whatever they have to do to keep their horse nice and calm and happy. Now, you might find you get a fidgety horse, just go quicker. Don't try and persist in making a horse stand still. What you have to do is maybe change the location, walk a circle, come in from a different angle, and then quite often the first 5 seconds that a horse stops in a new location are the best. So quite often I'll prep my client and say, okay, if you walk a circle, and then when you stop in that spot, turn 45 degrees towards them, weight on your back leg, put your arm up onto his neck and look at me and smile. So they know exactly what they're doing before they're even there, because I will tell them that the best shot is in that first 5 seconds, so we need to get it. And so that's a really good prep thing, again, all the way through the shoot. If they feel the horse needs extra control, again, having a bridle on instead of a head collar is a good idea. But again, when you change locations, change your clothes, not your clothes, their clothes. Change their clothing. So again, bringing in the variety. If we could flick on slides now, Jay, that would be great. So as you can see here, this is a variety of locations. The middle shot, the clients had this gorgeous lake in the background. Again, wouldn't necessarily have been my first choice to shoot, but the clients, you know, it's in their garden. They wanted to show off where they live and everything, so take some nice shots there. I made it a little bit more interesting by having a tree in the forest, frames them nicely. You can see down the bottom there, there's a nice wooden gate, always getting the client to lean over the gate and get the horse to come over. Bottom middle there, she sat on just an old wooden table. There's so many different props you can find around the yard. Top right, there's a nice archway. Whether it's man-made or natural, natural frames are great. Now, I shot this slightly from the side because had I come directly in front of them, the background was like a house. So it wasn't nearly as nice, whereas here, it just all looks lovely green foliage. And as you can see, the little chap, that was his favourite T-shirt, and it's all black and white hecticness. So I do the shots with those, and again you can see in the left-hand side the little girl with the pink and white flowers. You know, they're bright clothing, but again it was her favourite top, so why not shoot in that? And we have a variety anyway because she had a couple of other outfits. So, and then sometimes lucky shots like the bottom right one happens where this, I think it's a llama, I might be making myself sound stupid now by calling it a llama, but yeah, it came up and popped its head up, and that all looks kind of cute. With regards to posing, in that shot you can see I've just told the girl to mimic what her horse is doing, so to stand opposite it and look at me, and I mean they love that shot. That's their home, so you can see the nice fields in the background, and they were their llamas. I hope it is a llama, but anyway, otherwise they just sound silly. But and bottom left you can see we found a little poppy field, and again that crouching down. Now posing wise, there's only so many poses you can do with a horse, and you can see cuddling your horse is a good one, standing up and having a portrait with it, you know, a little bit more formal, or crouching down, leaning on something, sitting on something. All these things you can do in many, many different locations and have the variety, so you've got the clothes and everything, and that just all helps to selling an album or a disc of images. So if we could just scroll on, Jay. This next image was shot in Jersey. I was overexcited to be asked to go out to Jersey and photograph this lovely young lady who her mum wanted a record of her and her pony before they sold it, and we basically got the whole use of the island because for anyone who's been there, it's kind of small and they knew everyone. So found some incredible locations, and I was very excited to be flown out there. I went out there, stayed the night with them, and then did the shoot the next day. And that shoot I did actually shoot all day for, because you know it was a very exciting location and experience for me as well, and so it was a great portfolio shoot. And I mean, they had hundreds of images, but I actually stayed the night with them, edited the images overnight, and did the viewing for them before I flew home. So that was an awesome experience. And you can see there I've just used the entrance to a property, nice archways, got the girl just to put her arm up over the horse. And again, there will have been a variety of images there from that set. If we could move on, Jay. So dressing up, all my clients, so I say all of them, probably 95% of them want to get dressed up and put a dress on. You know, horsey people don't often get dressed up, and so having a photo shoot and getting on and riding in your dress is quite a cool idea. So it actually started with just one girl. She asked me if she could put her dress on. I said yes. We took some awesome photographs. I put that on my website. All of a sudden, every single one of my clients wants to have a shot of her in her dress and her horse. So it does make me a little bit nervous because, like I said, a butterfly could fly past and a horse would freak out. And if a girl's got a big dress on and it blows in the wind, they can freak out. So I like to go very slowly with this. So we'll initially start in an arena, in a controlled zone. They'll put their riding hats on. I'm very cautious. I never, ever, ever ask a person to sit on their horse without a saddle, a bridle, and a hat. If they say they are happy to do it and they want to do it, then that's another thing. If they're under 18, I'll always make sure that their parents are happy with that. Most people do sit on their horses bareback and, you know, without hats on. It's pretty normal in the horsey world to do that, but I would never take that chance and have it that I requested it. So we always start very slowly. I would never as well recommend that anyone goes faster than a walk. So usually the shot I would do is walking away from me, walking towards me, and then stopping and hugging around the horse's neck, and that's it. Jay, if you could move on to the next slide, you'll see all these girls that have got their dresses on. One thing I never do with images such as the one top middle is to post them on my Facebook page, because I don't want to attract any unnecessary negative comments about girls riding without hats. Obviously, being a horsey person myself, I absolutely know the dangers of riding without a helmet, and you know, it's a very individual choice, but I certainly don't want to attract any negative comments, so I would never post anything like that on Facebook or on my website. The only shot I would post is of a horse stood still and they're hugging around their horse's neck. Now, quite often, mum or the groom will be no more than ½ a metre from that horse, so I'm zoomed in quite tight, and they're there to grab the horse if they need. So you can see lots of different dresses. I quite like going to sort of open spaces, long grass areas, you know, just places that would suit having that dressed up look a little bit better. So yeah, like I said, there's always someone rather close by. The top image on the left, you can see the girl. She was desperate to have a photograph with both her horses in. Now, again, it's about safety. Do the horses like each other? Are they likely to kick each other? Are you going to be able to control them by yourself? So again, her mum was no more than 2 meters to the side of one of their horses. We did a walking shot away from me, turn around, walk shot, stand up, smile at the camera, look at the horses, quick mum, grab a horse, and that was it, over. So yeah, being quick in these scenarios where, you know, they're not wearing the safest footwear, they've not got hats on, is quite important that you move quickly. If we could just move on to the next slide, Jay. So again, like I said, just nice big open spaces are my preference for dressing up. This particular girl, it was her 21st birthday gift from her mum, so we spent, it was up in Nottingham actually, and I drove up there and spent a few hours. I say unfortunately, but there was a massive storm that day, and it was really stormy, but then the sun came out and then it went stormy again, so we were kind of running in and out from under the barn, but this shot was one of their favourite because her mum said, oh, it just looks like Jessica's come in after a night out and she's gone to collect her horse, and that's just her and her horse, and you know, it's wonderful. So just, yeah, it's just nice to be able to capture these sorts of images for the girls. So just really relaxed, and everyone's chilled out, but everything's safe. Now, if Jay, if you could just move on, there's a few tips and tricks just that I keep up my sleeve. The biggest one, of course, is polos to have in large supplies in your camera bag. Polos are really great if you want to get the horse to curl round their owner's body. So anywhere where you've seen a horse like cuddling, quite often there'll be a polo in the owner's hand. Gravel, I always put a little bit of gravel in a little box so I can shake it, and that just gets the horse to fizz and to kind of smile and look a little bit like excited. New locations. Horses are funny animals. If you move, so a horse might be perfectly comfortable in one location, take it 10 meters down the road and suddenly it feels like it's on a different planet, it's freaking out. So new locations can actually be really useful. If your horse is a little bit docile and a little bit laid back, then I would say, right, let's go away from its friends and go somewhere kind of different that it's going to prick its ears up and start smiling. Always, if you can, usually mum will be around or a groom of some kind that can just help shake nuts or be an assistant. You know, horses will look, if someone walks down the left-hand side, they'll look over to the left. If you then get that person to go over to the right, the horse will then look to the right. So I like to use a human to kind of help me get the horse to look in the direction I want it to look. But above all else, you have to just keep smiling. And however bad the horse is being, however stressed the owner is getting, it is just easy-ozy for you. You're having fun. This is great. Everything's going wonderfully, even if it's not. And yeah, keep smiling. So that's it really to make a successful equine shoot, and I hope it's kind of been helpful for you, and if there are any more questions, of course, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Yes, there are lots of questions. I didn't want to interrupt. I did where I could, but to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to keep track of them. While I do compile them, let's do the shameless plug for you now. Tell them that they can come to you and how to find you there before we get into the questions.
Thank you. So I, like I said, have built this, well, not built specifically, converted this gorgeous barn where I now train people to become equine photographers, but not only equine photographers. I'm very, very passionate about the business side and actually making a living and making money from photography. And so I run a whole host of group training that is either 1 day or 3 days, and I only ever have a maximum of 6 delegates per course, so it's very, very intimate, and you almost get one-on-one attention. And the 3-day courses, I only run 3 a year, April, June and August, and like I said, there's only 6 places on each course. So if you're interested in really getting serious about equine photography, have a look at www.thetrainingbarn. Sorry, it's not the training barn, it's trainingbarn.co.uk. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me, so we focus specifically on your business, you can have a day at my studio and we go through exactly what you want. We might go through a photo shoot, we might just focus on business marketing and how we can push your business through. Now, either you could do it just 1 day, or I do 3, 6 and 12-month mentoring courses. And like I said earlier, I did a 12-month mentoring course, and it was absolutely the best thing I've ever done for my business.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I've had lots of incredible feedback thanking you for your time. We're already at the hour, but are you happy to stay with us to do the questions?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry I ran over, but
I don't think there's any complaints. I've been having some fantastic feedback, loving the hints and tips and tricks that you've been sharing with us today.
Oh,
so I'm literally going to go to the top of my list and work down them. Some of them are repeated, so I'll take them out as we go. Okay. The one thing that we haven't touched on, and was at the top of my list, simple question about preferred kit and lens choice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I shoot with one camera, one lens. I have just recently upgraded my kit, but I was shooting on a Nikon D3, and my lens of choice was the 80-200mm, and that is all I have ever shot on for the last 5 or 6 years since I've had the D3. I have recently, for my 30th birthday, treated myself to a Leica F2, so I'm shooting on that now.
Brilliant, thanks for that. Do you have any recommended reading material to get a better knowledge of the horse behaviour?
Yes, the Pony Club manual. It sounds a bit ridiculous. I did read it when I was 12, but it has everything you need to know about a horse in it. The Pony Club manual.
Brilliant. I'll post that on the Facebook page after the webinar as well for people as well. How do I go about starting my equine portfolio?
Oh, okay, so this is a big thing. I do teach this quite in depth on my group training courses, but it's actually looking at your contacts, your immediate contacts. So if you were to get a big A3 pad, write your name down in the middle, and you start to brainstorm who you are connected to that has some connection in the horsey world. And believe it or not, every single one of us knows so many people that either, you know, a work colleague of a friend who has a horse, or someone of someone who is in the horsey world. And I would pick my portfolio based on how a certain combination of horse and owner can benefit my business. So, for example, in my portfolio, I'd say 80% of my clients are 16-year-old girls with their ponies. So I want that in my portfolio. So from my immediate contact list, I will find someone who has a teenage girl that has a pony. So I will then approach them and ask them. And I would recommend you find 5 people that you are connected to, that you contact. Another great profile of person would be the sort of 45+ glamorous woman. So they're my next highest customer, if you like. Someone that's got a great location. So, you know, you want to be photographing on estates or nice farmyards. So find someone that fits that. Someone that maybe is well known in the equine industry, that's got all the contacts. And you'll be surprised, you know, you will know these people. It might just be a connection of a connection. So that is how I would go about starting my portfolio.
That kind of leads me on to the next question, really. Do you have any sort of quick tips on how to find the right clients? So, you know, should you be approaching stables and whether and things and so on? Any advice there?
Yeah, so again, it would be starting with your portfolio. Get your 5 people that hit that are like your target market. So one of the key people in there that I just mentioned was someone that has good connections in the equine world. Now, it might be that you need to photograph someone first to get to that person, but however you do it, try and get to someone that's got all the connections, and then get them on board. Tell them what you're doing. Be completely honest. Say, I'm starting out in the equine market. this is what I want to do, da-da-da-da-da. Would you be up for promoting me, and I'll do a shoot for you and you know, maybe give them a framed image or whatever. So yeah, really, you'll be surprised if you look at your immediate contact list who you can find in the horsey world. And the horsey world is so small relatively, you know, I know people all around the world that are horsey, and everyone in some way seems to be connected. So once you get in with a couple of people, then your connections can spread very wide and far.
Brilliant. So I've come across a few technical ones now. Do you have a sort of desired ISO, especially as you're using more daylight than anything and you're not using flash?
Yeah, the cameras are so good now that I pretty much, I don't like fiddling with the technical side of things when I'm in a shoot. I just want to be concentrating on the horse and owner. So as a general rule, I would set my camera on f4.5. and I would make sure my shutter speed is higher than maybe 250th of a second. So whatever that, so on aperture priority, and that would therefore change my ISO. But as a general rule, I might stick it up onto about 1600 to start with, and just see where the shutter speed is.
Brilliant, and that actually led on to my next kind of questions: what kind of shutter speeds and whether you're shooting in aperture priority. So is it primarily aperture priority shooting?
Yeah, pretty much. On my D3 it was. My Leica, I shoot manual now, but I would still stick on 4.5-ish and just make sure my shutter speed's up over 250th of a second.
Do you have a quick tip for shooting a dark horse on a black background and still keeping the detail?
Well, so if it's so in a stable example where you've got a dark background and a dark horse, on aperture priority and matrix metering, your camera should do quite a good job. I mean, there is a certain amount of post-production that I do, but I would have to say I use Lightroom, and I don't edit for more than probably 10 seconds per image. So if I shoot for an hour, I'll roughly, to download, back up, edit my images would be an hour as well.
Brilliant, that's great. Are you using any filters in your shoot at all?
Nothing.
Sorry, I lost you there.
Oh, sorry, no, I don't use any filters.
Brilliant. So primarily, mostly simple fixes in post-production. As you said, you're only spending 10 seconds on an image, trying to get it in camera.
Literally, I just make sure there's a little bit of white, a little bit of black in each image, and then actually there's, in Lightroom, I've made up a special brush that just adds a little bit of clarity and a little bit of contrast, and if you just wipe that over the horses really look shiny and ping out a little bit at you. It's very subtle, but so a little bit of white and a little bit of black in every image, and then a little bit of clarity and contrast to the horse.
Excellent. Are you using any continuous light at all?
No.
No, excellent. And that leads me on to my next point then. Obviously, are you using any reflectors or to bring light back into the images?
No.
No, brilliant. So we can.
No, it's very simple. One camera, one lens. That's it.
I love it. I wish it was that simple.
And one setting.
Excellent, brilliant. I love it. A couple of people have asked this question, and this has been put the nicest way. Horses' ears can make or break a picture. Any tips on getting them pricked up and forward? Yeah, so that again, like I was saying in the tips and tricks bit, maybe a bowl of nuts. If you shake that, you are guaranteed to get your horse's ears pricked up. If you shake a little box of gravel, so I can actually do that now, holding my camera in one hand. I mean, I've become quite skilled at it. So just shaking some gravel, or rustling a crisp bag, or get a whip with a Sainsbury's bag on the end of it. You have to be a bit careful. If you've got a hyper horse, don't ever do that. But, you know, if you've got a horse, basically if you've got a horse
that is of the hyper end, you're not going to have any issues with getting it steered forward. If you've got one that's a little bit more laid back and might get bored, might just go to sleep, then you're going to have to work a lot harder. So something like a whip with a Sainsbury's bag on the end of it. Again, the reason I use a 70 to 200 mil lens is so that I can stand back and zoom in. I don't ever like to get too close to the horse. So if I'm waving something around, we've got some good distance so that I can read the behavior of the horse whilst doing that. And if a horse spins round quickly, I'm not going to get knocked over. So that's why I like to be on a long lens.
Brilliant, that's great. Focus point, is it on the horse's eyes or on the owner?
So depending on the shot, my favourite would be on the horse's eye, and then obviously if the owner is, say you're cutting off half of the horse and it's just half of its head, say, and it's more a shot of the owner, then obviously on the owner.
Brilliant. When you're out and about on location,
but generally speaking, on the horse's eye.
Brilliant. When you're out and about shooting on location and you're talking about the owners changing their outfits, how do they go about this? Are they just using the vehicles that you take with you?
Yeah, generally they're just stripping off in the middle of a field and dressing up again. Yeah, there's no, they're not shy, most of them. So, or if we feel like it, we'll go and put the horse in the stable, we'll grab a cup of tea and they'll change. But yeah, wherever we are generally.
Somebody's mentioned that they found that within your photography that you tend to favour sort of the centre for the subject. Is that just a personal preference?
Yeah, I think just over time, I've come up with a formula that suits my style and also selling. I know what sells, and so really my portrait shoots, they do tend to follow a formula, even though I can't predict where I'm going to be, the locations, the behaviour of the horse. There are certain images that of course sell time after time after time, and I can guarantee that a certain shot will almost definitely sell to every single client. So I've just come up with a style that really suits me, and yeah, it's just a personal thing.
Oh, that's great, thank you. We did talk, and you talked a lot about the safety elements. If they are going to work without their safety gear, do you get them to sign anything, a disclaimer or anything beforehand?
No, I don't. My insurance is all very highly specific. So I have said, for example, if my client has a £500,000 horse that gets loose, knocks her over, something gets broken, the horse then knocks me over, something gets broken of mine, it then goes through a fence and it breaks its leg, are we covered? And my insurance covers all eventualities. So I don't get them to sign anything. To be honest, I know people that do, and a friend of mine had said, it feels kind of awkward, and it feels like, here, by the way, if I break your horse, it's not my fault. And, to start a shoot off on that kind of feeling is just feels a bit weird to me. So I just make sure my insurance has covered it all.
That's brilliant, thank you. How far do you travel for a session? Is that just part of your pricing? Are you happy to travel for the show?
Yeah, so I do travel all over the country. I have stopped it mostly because of Barnaby now, but I do, when I do travel, my price is £6.95 for a shoot, and then on top of that would be 45p per mile for wherever I'm travelling. So I don't charge inside Hampshire, which is where I'm based, but outside of Hampshire I do.
Brilliant, that's great. Do you find that you tend to have a more popular product in the sales process?
Generally, all my clients are walking out of my studio with an album of up to about 70 images, a disc of everything, and usually a big framed image, maybe a multi-framed image as well, sorry, multi-image frame as well. They're pretty consistent. Equine, it's a kind of, they say it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but most horsey people have me back every time they get a new horse, or, you know, for another birthday or Christmas present. So they are good spenders. They love their horses like their children. And as long as you do a great job, you will get great sales. And I'm sure this question will come up. I show them about 150 images, and they select down from that.
Brilliant. Okay, so actually, straight away off the bat, now you've mentioned it, what does the £695 include?
So that now is a photo shoot and includes a 16-inch framed image. So that's the image is 16-inch, and then the mount and frame are on top of that, but it's a shoot and a framed image.
Brilliant. Is there a best time of year to shoot the horses, i.e. their coats and how they're looking?
Yeah, so winter time, unless they're fully clipped out, which means they'll be competition horses, winter's not the best time to photograph them, but spring through till October. I mean, I love photographing in November because of the colours. Most of my clients have competition horses, so they'll be clipped out. It just depends, but most people don't want their horses photographed when their coats are really fluffy. So it would be sort of April onwards, really.
Brilliant. We've just got a couple left. So you're shooting in RAW. I think you did mention that you were. Is that right?
Yeah, shooting in RAW, yeah.
Excellent. Handheld, monopod or tripod?
Handheld.
And can you recommend an insurance company for what you do?
Yeah, Williamson Carson are the I use. They're very good. I've used them for years now. Very reasonable and have always been great. So Williamson Carson.
Brilliant. You mentioned quite early on that you thought that you wanted to go for your qualifications, and somebody just asked, could you just tell them what qualifications you did go for in the end?
Yeah, so I went for an associateship with the RPS and then a fellowship with the BIPP. I actually was the first person to go from no qualifications straight through to fellowship with the BIPP, so I sort of wasn't expecting it really.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you. Okay, I've got one last question and then something that I want to tell you that I've had from one of the people on the webinar with us. When you refer to showing the clients the images, the 150, do you prepare them all first?
Yeah, so they're all edited, like I said, roughly 10 seconds, just those small little tweaks. And then once the images have actually been ordered, either for the album or being framed, if they needed any further adjustment, I would go back and do it at that point.
Brilliant. I just wanted to share this with you before we just remind everybody how people can find your courses and so on. But I've had this through literally within the last few seconds. Emily has given me the confidence to be able to get into the equine market. I've been inspired to capture people and their horses for a while. I feel I can now go and explore this avenue more, so thank you very, very much. And that, I think, is something that has been emulated through a lot of the feedback I've been having through today's presentation. So again, I'd like to reiterate that it's been very informative and it's been a fantastic webinar. So thank you from us here. So I just want to remind them that they can get in touch with you via emilyhancock.co.uk, or is it .com?
.co.uk.
And obviously the training can be found at the trainingbarn.co.uk as well. And you have the £50 off offer. MC Web, I believe, is the code they use if they want to take advantage of that for the next month on that. All of the links for Emily will be found on our Facebook page after the webinar has finished, which is facebook.com/The Photographer Academy. So it just brings me to thank you very, very much for joining us today. I know we've run over, but a lot of people wanted to stay with us, and lots of questions for you. And again, I've got Matt, the board's lit up now with thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it, even though it feels like I've been talking to myself. But I'm glad that I've been able to inspire some people. So yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you most certainly have. And just that we have recorded today's webinar, and you will be able to see it within the next few days on the Photography Academy if you've missed any of it. So I am going to bring today's webinar to an end. So thank you again to Emily. Thank you all for joining us. I've been Jay for the Photography Academy, and we'll see you all next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.